towards me. I felt that as late as it was time to leave and walk back to my car.
Huh? Now I wait to see what the hell we're doing. Slide right up. It's not the one we called up, is it? Man, that'd take a while. And this is how you come down.
On the tropical island of Koh Samui. Sarah's gonna go for her power walk. It's pretty noisy on the beach. If I try to do this on the beach, the waves are way too loud. But anyway, so I cracked open a folder in my inbox and there's 1,200 emails in there. Going all the way back to 2019. I forget why that folder was made. It has something to do with one of my email addresses filling up. But anyways, I don't know what kind of fish are in this little lake right here, but there's some pretty big things splashed on the top and haven't got a good look at it yet. The water's not clear enough to see them, but it's driving a little bonkers. All you anglers know what I'm talking about. But anyway, let's get some of these voices heard. There's a lot of people here have been waiting a long time. Now, There's going to be people coming intermittently, and I'm guessing. You're going to be hearing a lot of scooters ripping by. I guess just life ripping by in general around here. Listen to this. Sasquatch almost caught me skinny dipping. Who'd have thought in a million years this knowledge would be getting shared from Asia. Southeast Asia. Hi, Steve. For the first time officially, I'm going to write this down. I hope you read it because I just promised 5 people in the comment section that I would. I'll start off by saying I am the oldest daughter of an avid outdoorsman and grew up hunting with my dad for about 6 years old. I spent many hours in the forest around here. I remember my father and his friends would go out at dark and hunt coyotes all night long. Many of my friends have been loggers and outfitters. Never in my life have the topic of Bigfoot or Sasquatch come up. No one I knew ever saw one or talked about it. I remember seeing a preview before a movie on the Patterson picture of Patty, but that was only once and that was it. So here we go. There's a lake near my hometown that everyone in the Bitterroot Valley in Montana spends their summers on. At some point I discovered the water feels much warmer at night than it does in the day. At around 16 years old, I started a ritual of going skinny dipping after dark at least once every summer. Sometimes there is a group of us, other times it's only me. I was never afraid. It's just something I enjoyed doing. Fast forward 5 or 6 years from when my annual night swim began. It was a very hot July night with a super bright full moon. I was out with my friends having some drinks. My best friend and roommate at the time was the bartender. I'll call her Mary. When we were discussing how bright the moon was, and I asked her if she wanted to go swimming at the lake after she closed. Her only concern was bears, and I laughed and said, any bear would be far more afraid of us and would be gone as soon as it heard the car coming. She agreed. I helped her close up the bar, and we headed for the lake. On the way up, Mary continued her, I don't know, what about bears? I'm scared, blah, blah, blah. I kept telling her there were no bears up here. I've never even seen a bear up here. Also, at again, it was so bright out from the full moon, once we got off Highway 93 and onto the road that takes to the lake, we were driving without our lights and could see the road clearly. And then we would turn them back on, lap, and turn them off, basically goofing around and having fun. When we drove over the small hill to the parking area of the lake, there wasn't one car in the parking lot, which made it perfect. Usually there'd be some creepy camper truck there with a camper on it, so you'd have to go up to a different spot other than the main beach area. But this night, we didn't have to. We're the only ones up there. There was a circle that you drove around, and Mary parked right in the center of it, with the back of the car towards the water. As soon as she stopped, I bailed out of the car and began walking down to the lake. We were laughing and talking the entire time. She was still leery. Taking her time, she'd only made it a quarter of the way to the water when I had reached the shoreline. It was at that moment she yelled at me, look over your right, Brenda, and tell me what that is at the water. It's really black, super black, and it's not a rock. I can see the rocks. Just tell me what it is and then I'll calm down. Now I'm getting pissed. But still I looked in the direction to my right at the water's edge and could see the black thing she was referring to. The moon was shining on the lake like a spotlight. It was about 40 to 50 yards away from me, and it was not a rock and much blacker than any of the rocks. It was moving, doing something with its front paws in the water. I could see about 3 to 4 inches of hair on its back and instantly thought, oh my God, it's a bear. Unbelievable. I instantly thought, why isn't it moving or paying any attention to us? We were being very loud, laughing and yelling back and forth to each other. It looked huge, but had an odd shape, and I wondered what it was doing. I slowly began inching my way as close to it as possible, ready to run at any second. I was straining my neck and eyes to figure out what it was doing. I was about 15 to 20 feet from it, and at the exact moment my brain thought, this is not a bear, I could clearly see it was crouched in a position a human would be, with its hands between its legs getting a drink of water. That's the exact way you or I using our hands as a cup. It seemed the second I thought this, it turned its head so fast at me and looked at me directly in the face. Without ever taking its eyes off me, it slowly stood up and up and up to the height of about 9 feet tall and squared its body up with mine. I'm 5'7", and it wasn't face to face. It was face to waist. My brain glitched out because I could not identify what it was. The eyes were black, with a look of complete and utter hate/evil in them towards me. Are all humans? I don't know. I felt as though it wanted to rip my head off and kill me. Its face was flat with no hair on it. Had a very strong brow ridge like a Neanderthal. The hair was so black and shiny it almost looked bluish black. It was yoked up like a bodybuilder and it had to have been at least 4 feet wide. I could see the teeth were square and straight in a wide mouth. No neck, but the hair was thicker around where its neck would be. I was frozen in a fear I never knew existed. It had my eyes locked to it. It had my eyes locked to his, and I thought I was going to die. I felt hot tears streaming down my face, but I couldn't move, and all of a sudden he took one step towards me. I heard Mary let out a blood-curdling scream. One or both snapped me out of my frozen state. I turned and ran as fast as I could up the hill to the car that was about 100 yards away. I caught up to Mary. She was halfway down the hill. We both bailed in the car, crying and saying, "What was that?" "I don't know. What do you think it was?" "I don't know. Tell me what you think it was." And finally I said, "I think it was an effing Sasquatch." And she said, "Brenda, that's exactly what it was." And like that, we took off out of there, never looking behind us, never looking back. If it had wanted to kill me, I would have been dead. I know it would rather have killed me than look at me, so I don't know why to this day it didn't. Mary told me never to tell anybody. 3 days later, I was telling about 15 people that I knew about it. My father is a very well-known hunter in the area. They all know me and know I would never lie or make up something like this. One of the guys I was talking to or telling my story to was the mayor of the town I lived in. He pulled me to the side and said that he believed me because he was up there years ago parking with his girlfriend. He stepped out of the car to take a leak and something that smelled so foul went right by him through the trees. He was scared to death. He left, never told anyone, not even his girlfriend. One last thing I will add, there was no strong odor attached to the one I encountered. Feel free to use my name. I go by Montana on YouTube, and that's not my name, obviously. LOL. Alright, gotcha. Another one, I remember reading this a long time ago, but it's not a bad thing to read it again. But I think I'm going to follow this up later on. It's like I got sweat literally dripping off of me. The background sounds are frickin' annoying. And I haven't rented a vehicle yet to go somewhere cool and quiet, so I think I might finish these up in the room after I make Sarah go take me out for dinner. I'll be back in a bit and I'll share more from more of a quiet area in a little bit. Well, this is kind of cool. I found a place onto the roof over top where we're staying. Here's some of the not so common species of birds and the trees around me. There's nobody around. It's great. I was thinking about that previous email about the hatred part. You know, if you had to be quizzed on the patterns that we are blatantly exposing with everybody speaking, the hatred is probably in the top 5, I'm guessing. Don't you think? How many people have reported these things looking at them and it looked like it wanted to kill me? It hated me with everything it had, right? Why is that? There's an answer we need. Why is that? Right? Pretty sure we're going to get that answer. Now listen to this. Who do we got? This is titled Sasquatch. This came in January 30th, 2020. I'd like to remain anonymous. My encounter happened about 5 years ago. I'd like the location unknown, but I'll say that it was in Ontario. I was with my dad, his friend, and his friend's son at my dad's friend's hunting camp. We were up there for the weekend so my dad and I could help build the cabin. We're all staying in a camper trailer. The first night, I was woke up in the middle of the night to the feeling of being watched. I kept looking at the window from my bed and I never saw anything, but I had a feeling something was there, and I managed to fall back asleep. The next morning I was eating breakfast with my dad and his, while my dad and his friend were out having a cigarette. The front window that was beside the door was open. They were standing outside the window and I heard my dad say, "Oh," something just hit me in the chest. I could see him looking around, and he found an acorn at his feet. So you get an idea of the layout when you walked out the door of the extension that was attached to the camper, and there's a very rough, unmanned road, and then a hill that went up at about a 30 to 35 degree angle, and the acorn tree was about 20 to 30 yards away from the road at the top of the hill. And this is back in the middle of nowhere. There was nobody but us. Acorns don't fall at an angle and then start down. Later that day, at the fall start down. Okay, it's gonna be a couple typos, but we'll get it. Later that day, we're putting the roof on the cabin. My dad and his friend were on the roof screwing down the plywood, and I was on the ground handing them sheets of plywood. My dad's friend's wife came up to the camp and was walking over to say hi to us. We were in the middle of a clearing that was about 50 yards across, and from the far side of the clearing, a rock about the size of a baseball came flying from about 20 yards inside the tree line and flew across the clearing, and it landed 20 feet behind the cabin. I estimate that the rock flew about 100 yards. My jaw dropped. I was in awe. The next morning I woke up before everybody else. I was looking out the window and I saw something walk by the window. There was a bird feeder outside the window, and this was taller than the bird feeder. When everybody was awake, I went out and I measured the height of the bird feeder, and it was 8 feet off the ground. If I had to guess, this thing was probably 8.5 feet tall. Thank you for letting me share my story. I've been watching your channel for about 6 months, and I want to share my story, and I knew this is a douchebag-free place. Thank you. There you go. Another one. This one came in fairly recent. This is titled Northern BC Cedar Headband. Dear Steve, been following your show for about 6 months, and I want to thank you for providing a safe, non-judgmental forum for people to share their experiences. Stories are amazing, and it's great to listen to unfiltered, unedited stories from such a geographically vast group. I wanted to share a few experiences from last summer. In July 23, I was visiting my birthplace in northern BC. I had heard of many sightings and sounds of Sasquatch, but had not experienced anything myself. On the particular morning, I woke around 7:30 a.m. My family was still sleeping, so I stood looking out the bedroom window. After about 10 minutes, I heard and felt the most powerful scream I've ever heard. I could feel this scream to my core and stood in shock. Within a couple minutes, I heard a second scream. Again, I didn't move as it was like I was paralyzed. When I snapped out of it, I grabbed my phone, but no more screams occurred. The forest was a few streets up the hill, so whatever screamed had enormous lungs. Later that day, I visited a friend who lives on the edge of the forest. I had heard that he had been clearing some trees and something had been screaming at night behind his house and breaking tree branches. I went to take a look at the trees and was shocked the breaks were about 20 to 30 feet up, and I also found a large footprint below one of those trees. In the same town, another friend owns a gravel pit, which has been in his family for going in and out of this, which has been in his family for going in and out of this pit has been a daily occurrence for him during his adult life, and he lives on an acreage connected to this pit. Few typos. We'll get it. He's had many Sasquatch sightings as they seem to be familiar with him. He doesn't bother them, and when he goes in for gravel, they, and I mean a whole family, often watch him from atop the hill. On one occasion in 2021, he drove into the pit in his dump truck, and when he went to leave, the large male and two juveniles stood on the road. A female Sasquatch stood off to the side. Eventually they walked away and he was able to drive out. And this was his most close-up experience, and it freaked him out. My friend wouldn't go back to his gravel pit for weeks, and when he did, he needed a friend to accompany him. As my friend has had many sightings, I asked him to describe them to me. And one thing you will find really interesting is he told me on one occasion the female Sasquatch was wearing something that looked like a headband made of cedar. It looked like a weaved headband and had some green plant sprigs poking out of it, giving it some height. He said the female seemed very proud of her headband. Also, on one occasion, my friend saw an older male who had a lot of gray hair, and this Sabe wore a braid of cedar around his neck. Wow. I visited this gravel pit and found many small footprints in the dirt beside the hills of gravel. It looked like the young Sasquatch were playing in the gravel. My friend has seen them many times and he just leaves them alone. They seem to show themselves to him and to a few others who have taken shortcuts through his property. I thought you'd find the headband interesting as it was made from small strips of cedar. This is one explanation for why only small strips of cedar were taken from the trees. And also, for your information, when weavers make headbands, they take large strips of cedar and then cut it into 1-inch strips using a jerry stripper. So, it's not weavers taking the small strips off the trees. Anyways, keep up the excellent work, Noreen. Yes, Noreen from Home Room, LOL. Home Room? Don't know what that means. That's one hell of an interesting email that everybody's going to be going holy shit to, right? With a million questions, which you probably anticipated. And I'm thinking left out the details intentionally. Obviously people are going to go, where is this gravel pit, right? I don't need to know exactly where it is, but if you wanted to tell me at least how far north is northern BC, like a lot of people think Prince George is northern BC, where for me, northern BC is up near the Yukon for me. So I'd be curious if that was north or south of Port Nelson, north or south of Port St. John, north or south of Prince George. And that's all I need to know for me. If you wanted to share, and if your friend who sees them all the time is here, maybe he could share with us his knowledge. Not where, I don't care, not his name, just his knowledge. That's it. And if he's not watching YouTube, maybe make him watch this video and see if he might share some knowledge with us. That'd be very, very generous and awesome. Now here's another one that came in January 20th. Sorry, January 26, 2020. I'm sweating my frickin' face off just standing here. Crazy. In 1967, there's no title to this email, I don't think. No title. In 1967, I was 10 years old and had gone trapping with my grandfather on the Groundhog River in northern Ontario. He built a couple of cabins along the river to serve as stopovers as he made his rounds. We arrived at the cabin, which was deepest in the bush, to find our cabin completely ransacked by what we, at least I thought, not having heard of a Sasquatch at this time, were bears. For years, I put off the strange things I saw that day as merely the incredible abilities of a hungry and curious bear. But today, armed with the knowledge of Sasquatch in retrospect, it could only have been a Sasquatch. I should have guessed by the puzzled look and awkward silence from my grandfather that this was no ordinary bear, B&E. Number one, the door had been ripped off and was found in a clearing a couple hundred yards down the trail. Number two, the wood stove, a cook stove, which took 3 men to move, was found 500 feet up the trail. What was even stranger is that there were no drag marks anywhere between where it originally sat and the clearing where it was found. Number three, every jar lid, every container, every box had been opened. A case of wooden matches with 20 smaller boxes in it had been opened, and every little box had also been opened. Number four, the 2 cot beds were never found, mattresses and all. Fortunately, the bunks had been left intact. Number five, one of the windows had a loose steel mesh over it, with the squares being approximately 1 inch. It looked as if something had put its hand or a paw in and squeezed all the metal to the center. The list goes on. Things a bear could never do, but I was too young to realize. I never thought to look for tracks, but I'm certain my grandfather did, being a master woodsman, which is probably why he didn't mention it. That was the last year my grandfather trapped. I often wonder if it was because of an encounter or simply old age. Another interesting story, and I'm certain you have never heard. In 1994, I was working in a healing center in Australia where they often had shamans, psychics, come and do presentations, etc. A woman psychic had come, and as a part of her presentation, she had asked a couple of the staff to put some pictures in unmarked envelopes so she could guess what they were. As one of the pictures, I put a sketch of a Bigfoot. That evening, as she successfully guessed her way through the envelopes, she came to my envelope. Immediately her face went completely deadpan, dropping the envelope on the floor, and she said in a terrified voice, "Someone must stop these beings. They are working with the ETs and disappearing people." She was very upset and refused to touch that envelope again. And sure enough, it was my Bigfoot picture. Make of that what you may. My name is Dan. There you go. Why does that sound familiar? Did we read that too? I wonder back in the day. You know what Grandpa was thinking when he saw that sight, right? Oh man, I'm sweating. It's not hot. Hot? I guess it's just, what is it? Muggy? Very damp. I'm gonna keep going. So I'd imagine Grandpa knew exactly what trashed the cabin, right? Probably didn't want to admit it to himself, maybe. Who knows? But I'll bet you that's why he didn't go trapping again. This one's titled Bigfoot. Hi Steve, I enjoy your stories, especially about Bigfoot. I'm a God-believing man and a Christian who believes in Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. I'm not a radical nut. Both my wife and I are 82 years old and have no reason to lie. And I'm not afraid to say I believe you and the stories of many who talk about their experiences with seeing and hearing an unusual being of some sort. I live in Indiana, where I hunted and fished all my life except for 10 years, when we lived in Florida. I trapped in my younger days. One night after dark, almost 50 years ago, I was walking up the driveway from my father-in-law's 40 acres that joined our 5 acres. Off to my left, in a hollow about 25 yards away, was a loud and deep guttural growl, louder and deeper than any animal I've ever heard before or since, even on TV. I was too frightened to run, and the only weapon I had was a pocket knife, which I proceeded to open and carry until I walked on up to our house about 100 yards further up the driveway. I never did see what it was. When I got in the house, as soon as my wife saw me, she asked, "What's the matter with you?" I said, "Why?" She said, "You're white as a sheet, and the hair is up on the back of your neck." We both still remember that vividly. What was it? We still do not know, but it was an experience I'll never forget. There are no bears or mountain lions that are naturally abiding in our state. We owned a German Shepherd dog at the time, and there are some coyotes around. It was too loud and low for any of those anyway. I said before that I wonder about fallen angels when 1/3 fell from heaven with Satan. Not sure about that being, what they are, but one possibility anyway. Wishing you the best, and God bless, Danny James. Okay, Danny, appreciate that. I don't know if you're still hanging out watching this channel, but I'm glad I got to you finally. It's another pattern. The growl that shakes your frickin' innards. Oh, man. Anyway, I think I'm gonna head her back down. I think I might have to stick to being inside and doing these. It's just too much going on, too much noise. The background noise might not drive people crazy, but it drives me crazy, right? So, we'll see. I'll be back shortly. It's now the next morning here, and it rained like you would not believe. I thought it could rain at home in BC, coastal BC on Vancouver Island. I swear the whole ocean fell in the sky here last night. It was incredible. Just seeing the water drops hitting the pool outside was crazy. It was crazy. It's pretty cool. But anyway, I got a lot of people to be heard. So frickin' many emails, and it's a good thing. So I'm gonna get right into it. Steve, there's no title in the titled Bigfoot Experience. Steve, I'd like to share my experience I had that may have been a Bigfoot experience. I'll also share the location with you, but would not want my name shared if you were to publish this encounter. I like to hike at night. And one evening around 11 p.m., a friend and I decided to drive up the mountains for a hike. We went up a big cottonwood canyon in SLC, Utah. At the top of this canyon, there was a lake called Silver Lake. And from there, you can hike a couple miles up to another much smaller lake. We made the hike up and arrived around midnight. My friend and I were just sitting at the edge of the lake quietly and soaking up the evening. There are no roads to this lake, and camping is not legal up here. We do not use any drugs or alcohol. Suddenly, we heard what sounded like a big boulder being thrown into the lake across from us. It was dark and we could not make out any details on the other side of the lake, which is probably only 500 feet from us. We did not think much of it, but then it happened again. The sound was deep and bassy. It was not a fish jumping or a beaver slapping. I would guess the rock to be about the size of a basketball by the sound of it. I shouted out that I had a gun. I did not, and we left. Neither of us were really shaken, but it did seem strange that this would happen and that someone would do such a thing. And at that time, I was mentoring a number of young men from the neighborhood who had no parental supervision. We were all friends to this day. Anyway, we all decided to go on the same hike a couple months later. Remember, my previous experience did not amount to much, so I was not yet afraid of this place. Anyway, I took 4 of these boys up again around 10:30 or 11 at night. We had the same hike and we're sitting in the same place. Now remember, this is a couple months later. We're all sitting in the same place on the lake as my prior experience when the same exact thing happened. 2 or 3 times a big boulder was thrown into the lake. There are no cliffs or hills near the edge that could account for boulders rolling into the lake. The sound again was deep and bassy. I was a bit scared at this time because it seemed extremely strange that something like this would happen twice like this, 2 months apart, at a lake where it is illegal to camp at illegal to camp at near midnight. I yelled at again that I had a gun. I did not. We started walking out. This time, however, something was following behind us to the right off the trail, about 100 feet behind us in the trees. It was breaking branches loudly and trailing us out. See, that would suck. I don't give a shit who you are. That would really, really suck. It did this for a good while, and it got closer and closer to us. I was getting very afraid and feeling like a real fool for bringing these boys out at night hiking like this. I was walking behind all the boys, and one of them, little Chris, was shaking so badly that he could barely walk. They were terrified. Whatever this was, it got close enough to us that I was convinced it was going to attack us. I picked up a good-sized rock and honestly decided that if I was going to have to fight whatever this was in order for the boys to escape, I started making as loud and scary noises as I could, as a sort of a battle cry, but still walking away with the boys. I really thought this was going to be it. However, nothing ever came up on us, and we did not hear anything more following us off trail, and we made the entire hike back to the car. This happened before I even had internet access some 16 years ago. I had not read anything about Bigfoot, but as I started getting exposed to Bigfoot, the experience we had began to sound more and more like that to me. I looked up that area on a Bigfoot site, I can't remember which one, and it showed that there had been sightings in that area. I don't know what it was, but that is my experience. I'd love to hear your thoughts about it, and if the story is useful to you, feel free to use it in any way you like. Thank you, Clinton. Okay, man. Well, you know what it was. By now, you know what it was. Without a doubt. And I wonder just how many people have had the same thing go down at that lake. Probably a handful, right? If people are going up there, it's happening to other people. For whatever reason, they don't want anybody up there, right? At nighttime. Who knows about daytime? Let's get one more done. It's titled My Other Experience with Bigfoot. By the way, I could imagine the stress I would have if I had somebody's child with me in the woods. I took them somewhere. I'm responsible for them. And this shit starts going down. That would be my absolute worst nightmare, wouldn't it? That'd just be a nasty ass nightmare. Somebody's children with you and that shit's going down. This is titled My Other Experiences with Bigfoot. Steve, I sent an earlier experience to you about when I was a Marine stationed at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, regarding at least 4 Bigfoot that scared the living shit out of myself, 4 other Marines while fishing on the backside of the base. Now I'd like to tell you about another experience that I had when hunting near Mount St. Helens, Washington, after I got out of the service. I again wish to thank you before starting my encounter experience with you for what you are doing to bring the facts to light of day regarding Bigfoot and the people who are trying to keep this a secret or make people think if it is real, it's a harmless ape. This narrative is simply bullshit. Yes, it is. Agreed. I know that it's not an ape. I want to share my experience with you and hope that you know for a fact there are many of us who have experienced these beings that would like to help you in any way possible. It's important that you bring the truth out in the open where it belongs. There are far too many people that go blindly into the woods thinking there is nothing out there. And if it is out there, that it is a big, furry, friendly creature that means them no harm. To that I say bullshit. So, for someone like you to step up and try to get the facts out there, that may keep someone safe. You're doing a great job. And we need your help in getting to the bottom of this conspiracy or whatever it is that keeps these mindless, money-grubbing fake researchers going in circles like dogs chasing their tails. This experience happened to me in '78, shortly before Mount St. Helens blew its top. I was on the south side of the mountain where I'd hunted for years before going into the service. This is my first trip back to do some elk hunting. And I was so excited to be back home and able to go hunting, which I love so much. That thing's still recording? Yep. Sun's headed. Whatever. My hunting partner was not able to go with me this trip, so I was going to make a solo trip, which I'd done many times before. I knew the area well enough and was prepared for what the area would present. I always take at least 3 days worth of provisions when hunting, as well as survival gear in the way of extra clothing, poncho, matches, fire starter, and other essential items in my backpack that I carry. I know that many do not take such precautions when hunting, but I do because once, while hunting, I got turned around so bad that I spent 3 days in the woods wishing I had something with me other than my gun, knife, and what I was wearing on my back. No doubt. On this trip, I was going to hunt a power transmission line right away. It allowed me to park on the logging road and walk about a mile to where I would sit on top of a ridge where I would be able to watch both sides of a hogback on top of the ridge. It allowed me to be able to have a clear shot for over 400 yards in either direction. I'd taken several elk in the same location on various seasons over the years before entering the service. I walked in before light and reached the spot where I intended to hunt before the sun came up. I was there all day and did not see a thing. This was highly unusual, as every other time I had chosen this location to hunt from, I always saw something. Deer, elk, even a black bear on several occasions. Maybe the things I would see on those hunting trips were not what I was looking to hunt for, but on this day, nothing seemed to be around, not even a rabbit. It was also quieter than I remembered. For some reason, I also had the feeling of being watched, but thought it was nothing. It was getting later, about an hour before dark, and close to when I would have to leave, I started to hear movement across the right-of-way in the woods. It is not the usual sounds you hear from an animal, more like someone walking in the woods. I thought that maybe someone else was hunting in this area, and took careful note to be careful not to shoot in that direction should an elk walk out. I'd never seen anyone else but me in this hunting area before. I spent a lot of time gone while in the service and thought maybe someone else had found that this is a great location too. I continued watching both sides of the hogback, but kept having that feeling I was being watched. Call it sixth sense or whatever. It was just a feeling I could not shake. I started to hear movement in the woods across the right of way and it sounded like it was, sorry. I started to hear more movement in the woods across from the right of way. It sounded like it was something walking towards me. Knowing that someone was on the other side of the right of way and might shoot my direction when I got up to leave, I yelled over and said, "I'm coming out. For God's sake, don't shoot." More as a joke than anything. No one said anything, and there was no more movement from that direction. I once again yelled a little louder, "I'm coming out, please don't shoot." I got up, started walking towards the dirt road that ran down almost the center of the right-of-way. I wandered back and forth between the transmission power lines. Transmission power towers. I'm getting massive reflection here. I thought it funny that whoever it was didn't call back to say they had heard me, and it said it was okay. And once I got to the dirt road, I started back to my car, thinking that whoever it was didn't want to make any noise to scare any animals, as it was not quite dark enough to stop hunting. But for me, I felt the urge to leave. As I moved down the road towards my car, the sound of walking in the woods started again off to my right, just inside the tree line. I thought that maybe whoever it was had decided to walk out with me, but whoever it was did not come out of the woods, but just kept paralleling me. I stopped, they stopped. This is beginning to creep me out, so I asked them to come out where I could see them. There's no reply. I, again in a louder voice, said, "Enough's enough. No more games. Get your ass out here so I can see you." Again, there's no reply. I took my gun off my shoulder and jacked around into the chamber, keeping the gun pointed in the direction of the area where I heard the walking, but with my safety on, I continued to walk to my car. When I walked, it walked. When I stopped, it stopped. As it was getting darker, I became worried. Maybe this was not human. Remembering my experience when I was in the Marines at Camp Lejeune, I began to think that this might be a Bigfoot. I was also aware that maybe there might be another one on the left side of me. I started to watch not only my right side, but the left as well, as watching closely my back trail. And after all, I would rather be safe than sorry. I still had quite a ways to go to get to my car and knew it would be dark by the time I got there if I didn't hurry. So I started to jog back so I could possibly get there before it was totally dark. The thing to my right started keeping pace with me. I could hear it breaking limbs and what sounded like small trees as it kept pace with me. It was at this time I knew it was not a human being, and was almost sure it was a Bigfoot. I made it to my car without ever seeing what it was, but I wasted no time in putting things away neatly. I simply threw my things in the car and got out of there as fast as I could, without ever seeing it. I can tell you it's not a bear, not a cougar, bobcat, or anything else that I've experienced in the woods. I cannot say it was for sure a Bigfoot, but I would bet all that I have that it was. Needless to say, I've never hunted in that area again. I want to thank you for reading my encounter, and I want everyone to know that they should be extra observant when in the woods, as well as armed. I'm very careful when in or near the woods, and I carry a .44 Magnum in a chest holster, as well as a rifle, which is a 300 Win Mag. I'm very proficient with either weapon. And I forgot to mention, I was a sniper when in the Marines during my tours in Vietnam, as well as a marksmanship instructor before going to Vietnam. I can hit just about anything that I can see. But in the case of Bigfoot, unless he was truly trying to hurt me or someone else with me, I don't think I can shoot one. The one that I did see at Camp Lejeune, it looks far too much like a human to kill one. Not that I wouldn't shoot it if it was necessary, just that I would not want to kill one just to say that I did when I had done nothing wrong. It's just my personal thought, but I think that sometimes the Bigfoot creatures are a little too curious for their own good, and other times they just want you out of their territory and do what they can to get you to leave. Other times they may have other intentions, and that is why I'm always armed when in the woods. If they are human-like, there are good and bad humans, making me think maybe they are a lot like us. I don't trust easily, and I think that is how we should treat these creatures. Keep up the great work, Steve, and may you be successful in your endeavors. Feel free to use my name. Sincerely, Dennis Copeland, Milwaukee, Oregon. Dennis, appreciate you, man. I'm super glad you sent me this email and the one previous. That was a while back too, I believe. So if you have learned anything, a little more knowledge, more significant knowledge to you, you think it is, and you think it might help somebody here or me, email me again. All right, email me again. Get me up to date with what you got. I'm trying to keep everybody up to date with what I got. You know, obviously I've got more than I share most times, but I will share. It's just I have to. I just got to get a couple more minor pieces of the puzzle slipped in there, and then I'll let her rip. And I'm not far away from that moment. But anyway, there you go. Another pattern, right? When I walked, it walked. When I stepped, it stepped. I stopped, and it took one more step and stopped. That's a real big pattern being shown to us in all the emails from listening to all the people, right? Anyway, there you go. End of video for today. And I'm gonna get a little more organized. I might just do the audio maybe after this one. I think it's a little more easier and smoother. Do the audio with B-roll maybe. It's just there's moisture, there's rain, there's planes taking off, people and birds. And this is one of the calmest places I could find. But I just caught the camera. Just about went right over the concrete wall, which would have went down 3 floors. And I just caught it. Tripod I bought here slipped. So everything seems to be a bit of a hiccup until I get everything lined out smooth in my daily routine. Speaking of which, I gotta get going. Gotta go get beat up in the gym and sweat it up. I'll be back again shortly.